tell you a little story about our buddy Peter Joseph McCormick III, also known as Party Boy Pete, also known as Magic Man McCormick, also known as Trace, because he's the third.
Okay.
All right.
Buckle up.
My brother Tom will always say that Pete McCormick is all heart, and it's 100% true. And I'll give you, here's a good story as to why. All right. So Pete McCormick, he was born in Philadelphia in the Somerdale neighborhood. He lived on Sanger Street. It's in the Northeast. He moved up to Lansdale in 6th grade, right? And this happens, I don't know if this happens as much in football, but it's very prevalent in wrestling where a kid will be like really good as a younger kid. And then when they get to like high school age or whatever, it kind of catches up to them and everyone's at like, you know, they kind of get passed by.
Yeah, right? It's a critical age.
Exactly. Same thing happens in wrestling, but the adverse happens a lot too, where you'll be really shitty as a kid and all you're doing, say like if you're a heavier kid, you're wrestling kids that have all matured or started to mature and stuff like that, and you're just a heavy kid, right? So if you're wrestling as a younger kid, it's tough. I went through it. And our buddy Pete here went through it as well. We had a couple rough patches in middle school. Tough to get a win.
Couple tough ones.
Couple tough ones, right? Then after wrestling in middle school, our boy Pete McCormick here went up to the high school and started wrestling at the high school in 9th grade. Wrestled JV as a freshman, but noticed some improvement. He started to grow. He's got that. He's 6'3". He's 250, 260 pounds. He's a fucking bull. He's ingrained with generations of like dock working, bar bouncing, back alley brawling, Northeast Philadelphia. Yeah, that's where he gets his muscle. He's got a head like a log. Guy's a freaking beast, right? So he wrestles as a freshman. Then in between freshman and sophomore year, our wrestling team, right, North Penn's wrestling team, what they would do is they would have a summer camp where as a team, the whole team would go to a college and we would wrestle other teams at this college, right? So in between freshman and sophomore year, we went to Lycoming University. This is where Pete McCormick's life changed forever because this is where me and him finally met.
This is intense. Oh, okay.
This is intense. So they had dorms there. The way the dorms are set up at Lycoming is that there's like one dorm room and another dorm room, and they share a bathroom. Right? Mm-hmm. So we shared a bathroom. I walked in on taking a shit the second day I ever met him, right? But anyway, we're at Lycoming, and we know we were good because when I was a freshman, I wrestled at LC, and so did Tom and this other guy, John Deary, Tom, my brother. And we're wrestling at LC. LC's not a good team, and North Penn was a good team, but they had some gaps. So after we were freshmen, we went to North Penn and transferred, and some of those gaps got filled. And North Penn went from being an okay team to a pretty good team. So this summer, though, like at this summer camp was the first time that we ever got to gel with the team. So we get there and everyone's gelling and hanging out. And Pete started to notice then that he was getting better. He was winning more matches. He was being very competitive with kids, you know, older kids. Because if you're a heavyweight, you're wrestling upperclassmen most of the time because it's a heavier weight class, right?
You're thrown to the wolves.
Exactly. So as a freshman and sophomore, you're wrestling heavyweight. That's a tough ask because you're wrestling seniors pretty much all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference in that 2-year span from a sophomore to a senior. So Pete ends up doing well there, right? And he meets me, so his life changes dramatically. And then after that, right, I'll tell this. There was one match there. So we were there, and we're a goofy bunch of guys, right? But we were all like hanging out playing soccer out front of the dorms, and this team from another school in Connecticut started talking shit, right? And it was only a couple guys outside playing soccer. Then like there's talking shit in the windows. Eventually they all come out, right? And they like start jawing at each other, and the counselors had to break it up and be like, hey, go F off somewhere. So the way the wrestling camp was run is that there was 2 sessions. In the morning, there was like a training drilling session. And then in the evening, there was like a dual meet session, right? Where you would wrestle other teams. So it just so happened that happened on the lunch break in between sessions. And that night we were wrestling that team. So we went out there fucking guns blazing. Like, we had a meeting before, like, look, we're kicking this fucking team's ass. They're a bunch of pussies. Connecticut can't fucking wrestle. So we went out there and wrestled. We only lost
the agenda.
Yeah, we only lost one match against that team, and I was that fucking match that we lost. So that kind of yeah. But Pete ended up smoking a guy that looked like Mr. Potato Head. So either way, so we go through camp, right? Then after camp, you have preseason, right? So there's preseason, there's tournament season, there's dual meet season, and postseason makeup wrestling season, right? So in preseason, you're coming in, you're wrestling's a year-round thing, so you're already kind of conditioned, but you're coming in there and you're getting your shit together with the team. And in preseason is where they decide the varsity for the upcoming year, right? So if you're in preseason, right? So coming into this year, North Penn hadn't had a really good heavyweight in a couple years, right? And so one of the captains of the team, this guy Mike Yeager, he went to the football team, which he was the captain of the football team as well. He was starting middle linebacker. He went to college for football. Mike Yeager was good.
Double trouble.
Yeah, really badass guy. Good guy. And he recruited one of his good buddies from the football team, this kid, Dan Chang. Dan Chang was the strongest kid in the school. He was the number one offensive lineman in the region, and he went D1 as an offensive lineman. The kid was like bench pressing like 500 pounds. He was a beast, right? Broke like the lifting records at the school, total beast. And Mike Yeager recruited this guy to be the heavyweight on the team specifically, right?
He's a hired gun.
Hired gun, exactly. And there was also another kid named Kagan. Kagan was the starting varsity guy from the previous year, right? So Pete, coming into his sophomore year, knew that he had the strongest kid in the school that he had to beat and the previous like reigning heavyweight that he would have to beat, right? So to even be on varsity. So the way that wrestling works is that they have these things called wrestle-offs, right? So there's multiple guys in each weight class, but only one guy can wrestle in a weight class. So what they would do is you wrestle the guy, whoever wins gets to be varsity, right?
Right.
So if you're the returning varsity guy, you had a slot in what was called win night. And win night would be like it was like a practice dual meet where the two guys going for the last two guys remaining going for the varsity spot would wrestle in front of a crowd, and they had tickets, and it was just like a dual meet, right? So to get to win night, Pete had to beat the strongest kid in the school that went D1 for football and broke all these lifting records, right?
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, everyone likes Pete, but at the time, his track record wasn't great. So not a lot of people thought he was going to go, and people were excited for this Chang guy because we wanted to be like the really good team. So Pete ends up beating Chang. Big upset. And he beat him. He barely beat him, but he fucking beat him, right? So
took him down.
Pete beats Chang, right? Big win. So everyone's like, well, fuck, Pete beat Chang. Jesus, there's got to be something going here. That, it didn't beat him by like catching him either. He beat him. So Pete makes it to win night. Win night, now he has to wrestle the returning varsity starter, right? The returning varsity starter, Kagan, I think he had like 20 wins the year before. He wasn't like an unbelievable heavyweight, but he was a tough out, and he doesn't get pinned, and he made you wrestle, and he was okay, right?
Yeah.
Pete's at win night. Remember, Pete didn't have a win all through middle school. Pete had a decent, freshman year on JV, but Pete hadn't proven himself yet. Pete goes out. No one thought he was going to beat Kagan. Ends up beating Kagan, gets the varsity spot, right? So after
shakes the world.
Exactly. After he gets the varsity spot, we're still in preseason. So you know how with football in preseason, you would wrestle, you would play football against like St. Joe's or someone else out of conference, kind of test your mettle. So we did that too. And so one of the teams in the area that was like the best team in the region, they were called Upper Perk. And Upper Perk had a killer squad, right? Yeah. They had won everything the year before. They were complete badasses, right? And they knew they were good, but they didn't know we were good, right? So we knew going into this season that we had a good squad, right? We were so good that our coach actually said that we could all have our own individualized entrance music, right? Because he even said to us, he was like, you guys got some swagger. Let's get some things going. So we had a team entrance music, but then everyone was allowed to have their individual entrance music. I remember 3 people's entrance music. Dave Witt's entrance music was Cool J. I'm a cool girl, right?
That's a real intimidator.
Oh yeah, well Dave Witt was the best. And then the second one, Tom had because Linkin Park had just come out that time, so their first big hit, I forget what it was, but that was Tom's entrance music. And then the way dual meets were designed back then is that the lightest guy started and the heavyweight finished, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So if you had a dual meet, it would always come down to the heavyweights. So Pete's song was "Last Resort" by Papa Roach, right? Fitting.
Okay, yeah.
So we go into our first dual meet, which was against Ben Salem, which was like some nothing team that we could beat the piss out of, right? So we end up beating the piss out of them. We only lost 1 match as a team, but unfortunately, that match was Pete. But I was there. He got caught. And when you're a big guy, Pete's a big guy. He likes underhooks and things like that. Leaves him susceptible for throws where he can get caught in a headlock and be pinned. You know what I mean?
Is this like a common thing in wrestling where, like, you keep saying he got caught, or it wasn't a case of he caught the guy that who'd he beat? Chang?
No, he didn't catch.
That was like a flat out victory. But every once in a while, a guy can get caught and just it's like bad luck.
So the thing is with wrestling is that you can be one of the top echelon guys, and even you can get caught in a headlock and get pinned. Right?
It's like boxing, where
exactly.
You get to fight a guy a few times in order to say that you really own him.
In a way, yes. In wrestling, it's a little different. Like they have this thing called a tech fall. A tech fall is when you beat a guy by 15 points, and if you beat him by 15 points, you fucking own him, right? Because like I could be being beat by 10 points, right? But if I catch a guy in a headlock or something and pin him, or in a throw and pin him, and I fucking win, even though that guy was spanking the pants off of me.
Who's reffing these? If I don't want to go bird walking too much, but who's reffing these like inter squad?
So if it's at practice, it was one of the coaches. But if it was win night, it was Dr. Jeff Hartman.
Okay, and is he would be considered an impartial judge?
Well, he's a certified wrestling referee. So he was also a fan of the team.
You grew up with his sons, and I'm wondering if there are some shenanigans going on here in the wrestling.
Well, it's actually funny because 2 years later, me and Pete would wrestle at Win Night, and it was the reason we wrestled is because I had already solidified the spot for the 215 weight class. Pete had already solidified the spot for heavyweight, but we didn't have anyone to go against us, so we just wrestled each other, even though we were both varsity at our weight class, and Pete had taken me down and was on top of me and beat me pretty bad. And Dr. Jeff said, "Do you guys just want me to get you back on your feet, or do you want to end it?" And I said, "Let's stand back up real quick." And then 2 minutes later, Pete slammed my ass down again. And I was like, "All right, Doc Jeff, I think we're done here." So let's go back. Sophomore year, Pete, he didn't win in middle school. He had a okay JV freshman year. And then he hasn't won yet and hasn't proven himself yet as a sophomore, right? Then we're coming in. The second dual meet of the year was against Upper Perk. This was a huge rivalry. Now, you have to understand something. Each high school, I always feel like each high school, most of them, has like a sport that's the high school sport, right? So like for North Bend, football is huge. Obviously, baseball is big. You know what I mean? But like they're drawing a crowd. At
the Upper swimming Perk, ones too.
Swimming, yeah. At Upper Perk, wrestling was king, and there wasn't even a close second. Not even close. So the way they did it, right, they have what's called a spotlight, where the entire gym is all black, and all it is just one light shining down on the wrestling mat. So it's a pretty badass atmosphere, and they sell out. So we go to Upper Perk, right? Now, a couple things you need to know before we get started, right? There's scoring involved in dual meets. If you just beat a guy, your team gets 3 points. If you beat a guy by 8 points, your team gets 4 points. If you tech fall a guy, your team gets 5 points. And if you pin a guy, your team gets 6 points, right?
Right.
So going into this, we had a strategy where, because they had a bunch of good guys, that if they send out this one guy who sucks, we're sending out our really good guy. So what we did is we had this guy, Mike DeMatsis. He weighed in at 135, but even though he weighed in at 135, he could be sent out at 135, 140, or 145, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is, okay, so we get to the match, right? And so North Penn, I wasn't wrestling varsity at this time, but this was sophomore year. So we get there, our team comes out onto the mat, and it's a packed house, standing room only, packed house, right? Yeah. And we're there, our team comes out, we run around, and we do like our thing. The crowd is just raining booze down, just like torrential raining booze, just crushing us, right? So after we do like our warm-up thing, everyone meets in the middle, we do a yell, and then you're supposed to go to your bench, but instead we stood on the side of the mat during their warm-up, kind of like interrupting their warm-up, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden the lights were on, all of a sudden lights go out. DJ starts playing music, and he's like, bow, 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 and he's like, now introducing your Section 22, District 11 postseason champ, District 11 dual meet champs, Southeastern Region champions, Upper Perk Indian. And they start running out, and the whole stand starts chanting, tribe, tribe, tribe. This place is fucking rocking. It's fucking going nuts. It's crazy. So
it's like,
right?
It's the energy of a crazy football stadium packed into a gymnasium, like
it's
an indoor gymnasium.
It's the energy of it would be more like it's the energy of like a UFC fight meets like a back alley brawl, just people going nuts. And you have to understand,
a human sacrifice is about to happen or something.
Oh yeah, dude, you have to understand, Upper Perk too is a backwoods ass place. Wrestling is their fucking shit.
Yeah, well, they used to play LC in football all the time. So I've been there many times and I've dealt with the locals.
Yeah, there's some fucking black-jawed yokels for sure. So anyway, right? Pete was told going into this match, if it came close to the end, they might put in Kegan, even though Pete beat Kegan, because they couldn't risk Pete getting pinned, right? Because they were like, Pete, he tries throws a lot, he put himself in knockout positions, things like that. But Pete knew, he's like, no, coach, I can do it, right? So we get to the meet, right? First match comes up, we got our guy, Joe Radisoni, goes against this kid, Kyle Hartung, and beats him. Big win, 3-0. So we're up 3-0 on the score, right? Then our buddy, everybody's pal, John Deary, goes out there and he majors his kid, which is a major since he won by 8. So that's 4 points. So we're up 7-0. Then the fucking cool kid of the Cuyahoga, Dave Witt, goes out and pins his kid. Dave Witt pins his guy. Now you have to understand, Dave Witt had this kid pinned 6 times, but we're in their house and they had a hometown ref. So he didn't get it, but eventually he got the pin because it was blatant, right? So he pins him. So now we're up 13-0. Then 125 comes around. This is kid Pat Wertan. Pat Wertan loses. I think he loses, and it's 13-3, right? Then we're at 130, where that's my brother Tom. Tom goes out and beats the pants off this kid Luke Curley, right? Another 3 points for us. So now that's 17-3, right? Then here's where it gets tricky. Right. So remember so the way it is in wrestling is that you alternate who sends out the guy first. Right. So we got to 135. We send out a guy named Frank Schoendorfer. Now he was decent, but he wasn't like, he wasn't like the best ever. And they sent out this kid named Devin Smith, who was a really good wrestler. I think he made it to states. Devin Smith, and they did this intentionally because they knew Devin would beat Frank. So Devin goes out and pins Frank, right?
Oh, hold on. So one school sends out a wrestler,
exactly.
And then the coaching staff of the other school makes a decision, like based on what you sent out.
Yep,
I'm going to send
out. Okay, exactly. Because they had a bunch of guys weigh in at different weight classes.
Yeah.
So they're like, look, we put, because we knew if we sent out DeMatsis, they're not sending out. They're, you know what I mean? Because they don't want to risk whatever. So, but we knew we would get him back because we had DeMatsis. So we send out Schoendorfer. Schoendorfer gets pinned. So it's 17 to 9 at this point, right? So then 17 to 9, then it's 140, right? So that was 135. This is 140. Now this is where it gets incredible, okay? So we had a kid on our team. This kid's name was Steve Cabot. And I fucking love Steve Cabot. Steve Cabot is like, he's fucking Steve Cabot, right? So Steve Cabot goes out and wrestles this guy, Christian Floyd. Christian Floyd was a decent wrestler. I think his name was Christian Floyd, or his last name was Floyd. But either way, he goes out and wrestles this kid, and they're going back and forth. It's a really tight match. Both teams need this weight class. This was like a toss-up weight class where you know who's going to win. But at the last second, Steve Cabot, right, takes down the guy and wins by 1 point, right? And
wow.
And the crowd is going apeshit this whole time. So as they raise Steve's hand to win, he flips off the crowd at the same time. So now the crowd's going fucking crazy, right? They're like going their throat because there's no lights, so they're throwing shit at us the whole time, right? So then we get
that's wild. Wait. So during the match, there's no lights?
There's only one light over the wrestling mat, so you
even
can't
during the match.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh, I thought this was like just for intros.
No, the whole match. The gym's completely black except for
that's some wild shit, man.
Intense, man. It's fucking intense.
It's like Bloodsport.
So Cabot wins, right? So now it's 20 to 9, right? So then we have Dematsis coming up, and they sent out some B-League guy. Dematsis pins him, right? So now it's 26 to 9, and we're feeling pretty good because we have Zach Freiling coming up, would end up placing third at states that year and be a 2-time state champion and like a runner-up at Beast of the East, multiple fucking total stud. So we're like, oh, we're good. So 152 is the next weight class. So think about it. We're up 26 to 9 at this point, right? So he comes out, and what happens? First period, Zach Freiling gets pinned by this machine named Mark Smith. Mark Smith was a legend. He broke the record for pins for a freshman, pins in a career. I think he broke the win record at the high school he was at. He was a fucking stud, right? He went full ride to East Stroudsburg, and he was the master of the headlock. He could hit it from anywhere. Ends up hitting Zach in a headlock, and the ref kind of did a quick pin, but they still got it, right? So it's now it's 26-17 now, right?
Yeah.
Then next up, Brandon Hill. Brandon Hill's a tough kid. My dad had 2 kids on the wrestling team at the time, and he would openly say that his favorite wrestler on the wrestling team was Brandon Hill because Brandon Hill was out there. He was out there.
Sounds very believable.
Brandon was a tough kid, tough kid, and he was out there. He was out there to brawl, right? And everyone liked watching him because he was a drag out brawler, right? So he ends up wrestling this guy, Derek Zink, who was a fucking stud. He would only lose 1 match that year, and it was in the state finals, right? Wow. So, yeah, and his Derek Zink ends up tech falling Hill, which was huge. So instead of 6 points, it was 5. So now it's 22 to 26, right? So now it's getting down.
It's getting hairy.
Yeah. So, no, it's 17 plus 5. Yeah, 22. So then it's getting down. We have 3 matches left, okay? So we have this kid at 171, right? I'm not going to lie. We'll probably have to end up cutting his name. I did not like this guy, all right? There's two different types of seniors, okay? Right? 2 different types of seniors. There's seniors that go out and they're like leaders and they're upperclassmen, but they're not assholes. And then there's the other type where they're upperclassmen, they're assholes, and they suck, right? Mm-hmm. That was this guy. Did not like this guy. Either way, he goes out and loses, right? So now it's 25-26, okay? So now it's like, fuck, they came back, shit. Then we have 189. At 189, right, we have this guy, Mike Yeager. Mike Yeager was good, but he was going against this guy named Mike Pearson. Mike Pearson was really good, right? Yeager, I fucking loved him. He was a leader. He was an upperclassman. He was a senior captain, and he was a fucking leader. Fucking, I can't say enough good things about this guy. Really big fan of Mike Yeager. Mike Yeager ends up losing. So now we went from being up right? To it's 20. We have 26, right? And they have 28. Okay. So it's Pete's second match at varsity, and it's a must win. If he doesn't win, we lose as a team, right? And our whole dreams are shot, right? So we go out there, right? And you have to understand the crowd, they were down big, but then the big point swing, and they came back, and now they're ahead 28-26.
Yeah.
Back and forth. And you got to remember, they're watching basically trained combat, right? So they go out. It's the final match. Pete, and like, I remember Tom is saying to me, he's like, I'm just fucking praying. He went up to Pete. He's like, Pete, just fucking win. You know, please. They're fucking praying, right? This is like a big, no one's beaten these guys in years. They've been fucking animals, right? So Pete goes out, and it's the first period, right? And they have their crowd. Their crowd is going nuts. They're going nuts chanting for this guy. But you got to remember, right? My dad was there. John Deary's dad was there. Joey Radisoni's dad was there. Pete's dad was there. Mr. Hill was there. Cabot's dad. Like, we had stands full of these rough, like, ex-veteran, badass sons of bitches. So Mr. Deary is leading our whole stands chanting, Pete, 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 the whole time, right? And what happens? What fucking happens? Pete McCormick is all fucking heart, and he ends up winning the match and winning the meet, and it was the biggest upset. And after he's coming off the mat exhausted, some 80-year-old guy came up to him and said, I'm going to meet you in the parking lot, and I'm going to kill you, right? So he fucking did a death threat after this, right? So he's all heart. Not to mention, he would do this 5 more times this year, right? The same thing, 5 more fucking times. So he knew every dual meet was coming down to the end, to him, and he's all heart, and he never let us down, and he always came through, and he's a fucking winner. So I would like to introduce now, after that, I would like to introduce one of my best buds, right? Nothing but love for this guy. Pete, we all know you're great. We all know you're doing awesome. I just want to know, have you seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and what did you think about it? Because I thought it fucking sucked. How are you?